Hey everyone, so I'm back here in my kitchen so we can do some of this tea staining and coffee. So we'll do tea and coffee today. I do other eco like the turmeric and avocado. That's sort of a different process, so I'll show that in the coming months. A lot of times I like to do that outside once it gets warmer, but I'll show that process. But today, let's focus on tea and coffee. Now, the way I came up with doing this, and there's a lot of videos out there, you probably already know, on tea and coffee dyeing. Why am I doing it? Well, primarily because that's my dishwasher. Deciding to talk to me. Primarily because those of you who follow me, you see my papers, you see the way the dyeing is looking, and you guys are asking me, how are you doing your tea dyeing? Can you do a video on it? And I'm doing it because I think I can bring something a little different to this process in terms of the way I figured out how to do it. And it is a conglomerate of all the different ways I've seen other people do it, the ways I've eco dyed in the past. You know, you sort of look at other people's things and see how they're doing them. But the way I like to do it is I want it to be fast. I don't want like liquid and stuff everywhere. If I like to do it down here in the kitchen because I have a big enough surface to do it during the daytime, no one's home really, so I can leave it out to dry. I live in Arizona, so it dries pretty quickly, even in the wintertime. Like there's like zero liquid in the air out here. So if you lay anything down with water, within minutes, it's dry. You can also put it in your oven to help dry it. And I've tried that as well, just kind of play around with different techniques. I don't really care for the oven that much because I feel like the paper starts getting crunchy and like almost brittle, especially if you're not using like high quality 100% cotton or 50% cotton or handmade papers. Those will withstand the oven. But the other papers that have any amount of wood pulp or other things in them, to me, they get crunchy. One of the things I have done that I do find work with the oven is you can put them in for the oven to get into the oven to get the process started and then pull them out, like maybe when they're 50% dry. So they're not sopping wet, but they're dry enough if you stack them on top of each other, you know, like sort of doing this every other like this and then this, you know, so it creates a little bit of air between them. And then you could put them aside so that you don't have all your counters being monopolized by it. And then periodically go and flip them around. Then that'll help them dry faster, but also it's sort of in a contained space. So that's the most I sort of recommend. I just don't care for them brittle. If you're okay with them being brittle, then, you know, you could let them dry 100% in the oven. But then if you're putting them into products that you're, you know, selling or you're gifting, or you even want to keep yourself for any period of time, you've activated a lot of acid in that paper, and that paper is going to break down really quickly over time. So be careful with that. I do try to do my eco dyeing with at least 25% cotton. A lot of times I use 100% cotton because if I'm doing it in pieces that I really want to hold up, then I'll do the combination. Or if I'm dyeing tea staining papers that then I want to put my prints on, like my jelly prints, and I'm copying on those, then I do try to use the better papers. But today we'll just use a stack of copier paper because I do use a copier paper, so I'm not an elitist, but I do kind of think about how I'm going to be using it, and then I sort of select my papers accordingly. That said, I think that's everything. We'll come down to the counter, and then I'll start showing you the various things that I use and how I do it. All right, here we are. So, first of all, you see this long piece of paper here, and what it is, it's just a roll of drawing paper. Looks like this. I just take and I line my counters. And this counter that I'm on is pretty big. It's a center aisle, so I can get 2 of these lengths on here. And a piece in the middle too. So I can lay this whole counter out with quite a bit of paper. And I do this because, first of all, It helps in the drying process because it creates some air between that and my counters, first of all. Secondly, if you're working on counters that maybe that can stain easily, then you want to be careful not to have obviously the tea and the coffee right on them. You wouldn't want that. These are like a granite, so they don't really stain. They don't, like, nothing seems to happen to them, but you can, but I do like using the paper because to me it helps with the drying process and it keeps everything nice and neat. The other thing that it does by a byproduct is that this is an example of some that I've already dyed on. Look at all this great paper you get. So then you get lengths and lengths of this drawing paper that you can use back down and create book pages with them. You can collage with them. So I end up with quite a bit of this stuff when I'm done. So that's a nice byproduct. So if you do put some paper, drawing paper down, like these long rolls, or any kind of large sheets of paper that, like, okay, great, I can then use them later. This is a great byproduct. So just a little tip there. Okay, so what do we use? So this is the kind of, these are a couple of papers that are done. So this is using copier paper, and you know, I kind of stop at different points in it. You'll see, depending on how much you put on there, like you can leave spaces empty and, you know, stuff like this. So I'll play around with how I, with each page, and you'll be able to see what that looks like. And, you know, you always hear me talking about using, like, sometimes, like, I have, for some reason, for a person who doesn't care for a lot of that scrapbooking paper, how I have so much of it, I do not know. I think it's been gifted, and or sometimes I'll buy a pack because there are papers in there that I like there may be some flock papers in there, but then there's other regular papers in there that I really don't care for. So these are the worst papers because they're so cheap. They, like, I mean, they tear so quickly. But I have, so they're good to use for backing paper. So sometimes I'll use these to glue onto fabric, or, you know, mostly I use it to glue on fabric or to other prints that I want to have a tea stain back to them, but I don't want the front of the print to be tea stained. And these papers do stain nicely. I have to give them that. So this is an example of just using your old, what do you call it? Scrapbooking papers. Okay, so now let's move on to, I have two things. I like to use my Pyrex because, you know, I'm using hot water. I prefer to use something I don't have to worry about shattering or bursting or whatever. And I know that, you know, if I need to stick it in the microwave to nuke it to get a little hot again, I can do that. So I have a tendency to, we're going to do one tea and one coffee. And the reason I'm going to show you both is because there's just two slightly different ways that I make them. No big deal, but I might as well show you. And you do get different coloration, but the most important thing is a lot of times coffee will leave behind sort of a coffee smell, but the tea doesn't. So, you know, sometimes people don't care for a coffee smell. I mean, I find that 90% of the people are okay with a slight coffee smell, and sometimes it'll dissipate and you won't smell it at all. But sometimes it is there, and, you know, to some people it's warm and cuddly or reminds you of coffee in the morning, but to some others they don't really care for it. So the black tea does a great job, and of course then it doesn't leave any odor. So if you're working with something and you don't want the coffee smell ultimately, or you may have a client or you're doing something for someone and they really don't care for the smell of the coffee, then you'll know how to tea dye. So it just, you know, it's your choice. The other thing that I have found is it's best to use good quality black tea and cheap coffee. I find that if you could use a good quality black tea, oh my goodness, it just makes a real good, rich brew. So this is Trader Joe's Irish Breakfast black tea bags. So this works well. And then you don't have to use as many either. And then this is just instant coffee that I got from the dollar store. It's like a no-brain, no name, just instant coffee. Cheap instant coffee works wonderfully. So start off with here. So I'm not doing a really big batch because I'm just kind of showing you guys how to do it. So I'm not going to be doing a lot of production today. But let's see, we can put like maybe 3 tea bags in here, and that should be enough. I have maybe like about a cup of water, and even with these tea bags in here, that's going to produce, oh, so hot. So that's going to get a nice dark color there. My water is hot, so I had already kind of done that before. So we'll put that to the side. And then with the coffee, same thing. I have about a cup in here. And let's get like a teaspoon. Let's do 2 teaspoons. I find we want the coffee dark. So let's see. So that's pretty good. So I put like 2 teaspoons in a cup of water. And you can play around with the measurements, but that's like roughly what you want to use. If you find that you want your coffee darker, you can add more. But this will do the job. Okay, so now we're going to lay some papers out. So I'll do these in front of you, then I'm going to kind of lay them out down so you can see what they look like. Okay, so the other thing I use is this cloth. I know it looks a little gross, but it's stained. Okay, I just use the old washcloth, and I happen to like this method. To me, this seems to this is the trick for me. It just works really well versus dipping the paper. I've seen a lot of ways. A lot of times people will dip it, or they'll take a spoon and be pouring it on the paper. I've seen people take and fill the pan up, put the paper on the pan, and put the liquid on top and pour it, and then just let it sop in, and that's okay. I've tried a lot of different ones, and I don't know how one day I was just in here working and I had a lot to do, and I had kept on using the cloth to just kind of wipe my hands, and there was something an extra amount spilled, and I sopped it up, and then I started sopping it on the paper. I'm like, wait a minute, this is how I should be doing it. So it was one of those happy accidents, right? Okay. So I'm going to put 2 pieces down here. One we're going to do with coffee, the other we're going to do with tea. So I'm going to try to start off and just use 1/2 of the cloth first so that you can see. So basically, let me just so you guys can see it. Okay, you can see the liquids. So basically, I'm just going to take it in, put it in, and then I'll move this out of the way. And then basically what I'm doing is I just take, sometimes I do it like that, and just start the process of dabbing the paper. Now, what I'm showing you the tea first, and then I'm getting ready to show you the coffee. And then I'll show you how I would be doing it. So I want you to just see the color right off. So I'm using the other side that's dry for the coffee. So you can see the coffee going down is about the same color. It's a little darker, yeah. And then same thing, I just kind of dab it. And some of these little spots you can leave, you can, sort of do it like, and then, so what I'll normally do, so I'm gonna show you this before I move on. What I would normally do is do the whole, I'll have paper stretched all out over the counter. And then normally I'll only do tea or I will only do coffee. I'm showing you both right now so that you guys can get an idea all in one video. But what I would do too is once I do the whole thing, then I flip them over. It's pretty wet on the bottom. And then I go at the backs because I find that, I want the backs to be done too. So I'm just going to do just like this. And then we'll get the tea side over here. See how the tea is lighter. And then just move it around. So, and then what I do is normally this would already be in place, but for this camera, I'm just going to move these out the way. And then I'm going to line a batch of them up, and I'll show you. It's going to be a little harder to see. You're not going to be able to see all the counter. just the way it is. But you see how the paper is also really. So what I'm going to do is I would just have my sheets laid out like this. And I'm going to do some of it will be off camera, but I'm doing it like this because at least you guys can see how quickly I can get a batch done. So I'm going to lay out, I have 8 pieces right here. And my counter it takes more like 8, 9, 10, 11, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I can do 14, the length of this counter. And so 28 if I did the whole counter. Sometimes I can get some extras in the middle here. So I can do about 30 sheets. But if you just haven't, you know, your counter length, like on your side counters, you know, or whatever above your dishwasher, you can get like a bunch done. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll go into this coffee. And what I kind of do is I just start squeezing it. You see, I'm just squeezing it all around the place because I want it to get started. And then I come back and I just kind of, basically, I'm just now distributing. And normally where it first hits, like where it's sitting like here, these little dots will get like a little more color to them. You know, and I just kind of do it like this. Dab it on. Kind of go to all the, you know, it's already started, so it's already a good amount down here. And the more you do with the background papers being wet, and so basically you're just pouring it on and you're basically sopping it back up. So back down to here. I don't know if you can get it to go here a little bit. So here, you know, it's sitting there. You see it's all sopped in. So then you just take your washcloth and just kind of distribute it all around. And get some more in there. And so just that quickly, I did 8 pieces of paper, like done. You know what I mean? And then this can dry. So like I said, generally what I do, so then I'm gonna flip them. I flip them really quickly, just lift it up, pop them over. And then I like to do the backs. You don't have to. A lot of times it's like it's going through and it's sitting in puddles of water. So, you know, like a lot of times it'll be fine on the backside, but I find that I enjoy doing this. So I don't mind just kind of covering my backs a little bit. And same thing here. So you're just basically, the paper's already pretty wet. So you're just putting some on. The backs are a little quicker to do. You're basically just rubbing it all in, getting some extra back here. And the dogs are in there scratching. You can probably hear her collar. And that's it. Literally, that is, so that is what I do. Now, like I said, I would do a whole batch of it. So lay it out as far as many places as you can. And also because if you use this paper, you can lay it on your floor and you literally could do a batch, move it off the counter, put it over on the floor by lifting the whole, because you just lift the whole piece of paper up and then put another batch down. I just like to get, if I'm doing it, I want to try to get at least 100 sheets of paper done. And I can generally do that by doing 2 batches on the counter. So what I do too is, like, for instance, like I would stop here and then I would normally go back to my studio, keep on working on whatever projects I'm working on, maybe make a video for you guys, that kind of thing. And then I come back down. These would be dry. I pick them up and I start another batch. I keep everything going. If my solution, normally you don't have to worry about reheating it because once it actually takes the color, then it's fine. But if you wanted to reheat it and add some more tea bags or some more coffee to it, you can just throw it in the microwave if you use The glass is like this. And then sometimes also what you can do, if you are short on space, let's say you don't have any place to move it on the floor, you don't have any place else to go, you can literally take and put some more sheets on top of what you were already working on. And then you can just get some more and just kind of do the same thing. And just make sure that you kind of sop up what's underneath there so that these papers will keep on drying. See how I'm lifting this up? So you can literally do that, lift it up and just, you know, put it to the side on another piece that has started to dry. And so you could actually double stack. Just make sure that when you do that, you try to get, normally I'll sock the water out, then I use the washcloth to kind of, you know, take water off of it. And the neat thing I like about this system is I literally can take the water off. So I'm actually kind of starting the drying process while I'm making it, you know. So that part's pretty cool too. So like right here, I would like kind of leave that darker because it's going to be a little bit more absorbed there. And around it is going to be lighter where it's splashed. And that'll make an interesting piece of paper. So I'll just leave that one like that and we'll just see how it dries. The backs are already, when you're doing it on top of stuff you've already done, the back is starting to pick up color. So you don't have to focus that much on the back. Okay, so that's basically how I would do it. Let's look over here because I'm sure these have already started to dry. They're not 100% dry, but you can see how that's how this one is going to look as it continues to dry. These white spots are going to be like a creamier color, while the paper itself is going to be. Now this, I happen to like it really mottled like this. It's just my thing. But if you don't want to, then when you're doing it, just make sure that you're just getting even coverage with the same amount of, you know, solution. Then that way you'll get a nice overall pattern. But I like it like this. I want it to look like it's been, you know, paper that got damaged or whatever. So this is going to dry nicely. And I will show, I'll put some pictures up of this. On the video frame, I'll try to do that. So let's see. That's it. That's literally it. That is how I kind of looking over here at my monitor, looking at you guys. This is like crazy. Oh my goodness. Let's see. This is how, am I good here? Yeah. That's basically how I tea dye and coffee dye. And I get a big batch done. To me, it's neat and clean. Like you see, my kitchen's not all a mess. My counter is still good. If you do this during the day and then you need to cook, you got this whole piece of paper you can move out the way. You've only got a couple little bottles, a little containers. You haven't had to engage your oven. And if your electrical supply people are like mine, you know, like between noon and 7, that's when you don't want to put your oven on, which is crazy because like, people cook dinner after 7 o'clock. I don't get it. But anyway, that's the world we live in. But, you know, like you're using your electricity and you really don't have to. This technique, you don't have to. Even if you live in a place that's got a high humidity, like you have a lot of moisture in the air, if you're just patting it dry like I'm showing you and then taking those papers and laying them aside on other papers or, you know, like somewhere else, they'll dry pretty quickly because they're not going to be sopping wet or they're not going to be stuck together in a pile that's sopping wet. So I find that it dries pretty quickly and without a lot of problems. So these right here are not going to be, they're going to be sort of like, they're not going to be very dark. I made the solution a little lighter. So, but they're going, when they dry, they're going to look like these, actually. When I look at it. They'll look like this. It's kind of hard for me to hold it up and see. You can sort of see that this is wet and this is dry, but as it dries, it gets darker. So that's how I like to do it. But like I said, you can definitely change the amount of coffee. You can make it darker, you can make it lighter. I have a tendency to err on the side of making it lighter and then adding, because I don't want the papers too dark, because I like to print on them, and you want to write on them, whatever. You don't want to be too distracting. Plus, I want sort of a neutral palette, so no matter what colors I'm working with, what I want to print on top of it, I don't have a paper that's so dark that my images won't show well or whatever. But anyhow, that's me. But, you know, I go both ways. All right, so there you are. Hope this helps. Any questions you have, put them below the video. And thank you guys for hanging out with me over here. And please don't forget to like the video and subscribe. You know, I never ask you guys to do that. And I think about that. Everybody else at the end of the video says, make sure you like this and subscribe. And I do, because I like it. And at the time, I'm not necessarily thinking to hit like the video or to subscribe. But it works for me. Like, I'm like, oh yeah, I don't want to forget who you are. Like, I don't, like, it's not like a negative thing or something. So I'm thinking, I should be saying that. So you guys know where I am. I'm kind of like all over the place. But anyhow, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And also subscribe to the channel if you're not already a member of this tribe over here. All right, guys, take care, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.